The time is 2:17 p.m. The Arabian Sea, 198 nautical miles southeast of Ras Al Had, in the broad open water where the Gulf of Oman releases into the deeper strategic basin of the Indian Ocean. This is open ocean by most definitions. No choke points, no traffic separation schemes, no coastlines close enough to complicate maneuvering. Just blue water, a moderate northeast swell, and approximately 100,000 tons of nuclear-powered aircraft carrier conducting flight operations under a sky that is clear, hot, and empty in every direction, visible to the naked eye. The USS Nimitz, CVN-68, the lead ship of the class that carries her name, is launching and recovering aircraft at the center of Carrier Strike Group 11. She has been operating in the Arabian Sea for 6 weeks, conducting the combination of power projection, maritime security operations, and sustained presence that constitutes the operational life of a forward-deployed carrier. The flight deck is in the middle of a launch cycle. 2 A-18E Super Hornets on the bow catapults, the flight deck crew in their jerseys moving with the organized precision that makes carrier aviation simultaneously the most dangerous and most choreographed environment in military service. In the carrier's Combat Direction Center, the 2 p.m. watch had been running for 17 minutes. The tactical action officer was managing a picture that included the standard elements of a carrier strike group at flight ops, the escorting surface combatants on their stations, the E-2D Hawkeye overhead providing the air picture across several hundred miles, the submarine whose position is not discussed in documents like this one, and the continuous stream of flight deck activity that populates the CDC's own track display with friendly air contacts departing and recovering in regular sequence. The surface picture was clean. The air picture was clean. At 2:19 p.m., the E-2D flagged a new contact. Bearing 315 degrees from the Nimitz's position, northwest, from the direction of the Yemeni and Omani coastlines, from the general bearing of the Arabian Peninsula's southern margin. Range 74 nautical miles. Altitude 8,400 feet. Speed 138 knots. Radar cross-section very small. The tactical action officer looked at the parameters. He looked at the bearing. He looked at the speed 138 knots, which is low and slow for a manned aircraft, and entirely consistent with the cruise speed of a medium-altitude reconnaissance drone. He looked at the altitude, 8,400 feet, high enough to overfly a surface target with reasonable sensor geometry, low enough to be within an optical and infrared camera's effective resolution envelope for a large surface vessel. He looked at the course the contact was on. The contact's course, projected forward at its current speed, reached the Nimitz's operating area in approximately 32 minutes. "Air," he said to the air warfare coordinator. "Classify that contact." The classification came back in 7 seconds. Possible Shahed-191, Iranian manufacture. Confidence, medium, pending additional collection. The tactical action officer processed this for 3 seconds. A Shahed-191 over the Arabian Sea, 74 nautical miles northwest of the Nimitz, on a course consistent with a reconnaissance approach on the carrier strike group, at an altitude and speed optimized for airborne surveillance rather than terminal attack. He picked up his handset. "Strike, CDC, new contact bearing 315, 74 miles, possible Shahed-191. Reconnaissance profile, request immediate intercept. The response from the strike operations coordinator came back within 15 seconds. The two-ship combat air patrol, currently holding at 22,000 feet to the northwest, 2 FA-18E Super Hornets from Strike Fighter Attack Squadron, 18 months into their carrier aviation career, and thoroughly briefed on exactly this category of contact, was vectored toward the contact by the E-2D at 2:19 p.m. and 40 seconds. This is the point where the Shahed-191 deserves its proper introduction, because it is a different animal from the Shahed-136 that the Red Sea has made familiar. The Shahed-136 is a one-way attack drone, simple, cheap, designed to be expended. It flies in a straight line toward its programmed target and does not come back. The Shahed-191 is something more operationally interesting. It is a medium-altitude, long-endurance reconnaissance drone, a twin-boom design with a pusher propeller, a payload bay designed for optical and infrared cameras, a communications suite designed to relay collected imagery back to a ground station in real time, and a range sufficient to operate from Iranian or Yemeni territory over the Arabian Sea at useful loiter distances. Iran has displayed it publicly at defense exhibitions. It has appeared in operational reports from the region. Its existence is not a secret. What makes the Shahed-191 operationally interesting in this specific encounter is its communications architecture. It is designed to transmit collected imagery back to a ground control station via a data link. The data link is the essential function. A drone that collects imagery but cannot transmit it in real time is limited in tactical utility. Real-time transmission makes the collected imagery immediately actionable for whoever is watching the feed. Real-time transmission also produces emissions. Every data link transmission is an electromagnetic event. It has a frequency, a modulation, a power level, a transmission pattern, and a directional characteristic that reflects the antenna's geometry and the ground station it is aimed at. These characteristics can be collected, characterized, and used in ways that are operationally significant to the people doing the collecting. The Shahed-191's designers understood that the data link produces detectable emissions. They had made choices about the data link that reflected their assessment of the electromagnetic environment their drone would operate in. Those choices were about to be examined in detail by the AN/SLQ-32 suites on 3 U.S. surface combatants and the EA-18G Growler that was already being brought to alert on the Nimitz's flight deck. But first, the vulnerability window. At 2:17 p.m., 2 minutes before the contact appeared on the E-2D's picture, the Nimitz had been in the middle of a launch cycle. Launch cycles on a carrier are periods of concentrated flight deck activity. Catapults firing every 90 seconds, aircraft at full afterburner on the bow, the deck crew managing the organized chaos of getting aircraft into the air safely and quickly. During a launch cycle, the carrier is committed to a course and speed that supports the flight operations. Into the wind, steady, predictable. Into the wind on the Nimitz's current operating day meant heading 250 degrees southwest toward the contact's approach bearing, a carrier heading toward an approaching reconnaissance drone, maintaining a steady course and speed committed by flight operations is a different tactical picture than a carrier with the freedom to maneuver. The Nimitz could not turn without disrupting the launch cycle. The launch cycle was not something that could be safely interrupted once begun. Aircraft on the catapults, aircraft in the break overhead waiting to land, the complex sequencing of carrier aviation that cannot be paused without consequences. The Nimitz would maintain her launch course for approximately 11 more minutes. During those 11 minutes, the Shahed-191 would close from 74 nautical miles to approximately 52 nautical miles, and the carrier's heading would remain predictable and steady. This was not catastrophic. The Combat Air Patrol was already vectored. The Shahed-191's approach profile was not a weapons attack. It was a reconnaissance approach, which carries a different threat calculus. But the 11-minute window of committed heading, during which the carrier was doing exactly what a reconnaissance platform wants its target to do, hold still and be photogenic, was real and noted by everyone in the CDC who was paying attention. The Tactical Action Officer noted it. The Strike Operations Coordinator noted it. The commanding officer, who had arrived in the CDC at 2:21 p.m., noted it and made no comment because the note was correct and the situation was being managed. 11 minutes. The CAP was vectored. The EA-18G was at 5-minute alert. The collection was running. At 2:24 p.m., the Combat Air Patrol reached intercept geometry with the Shahed-191 at 61 nautical miles from the Nimitz. The FA-18E leads AN/APG 79 AESA radar had been tracking the contact on data link since the E-2D vector, and at 61 nautical miles, the radar's own track was solid and stable. The contact was exactly where the E-2D said it was, flying exactly the course and speed the E-2D had reported, with no deviation and no evasion. The Shahed-191 does not evade. It is not designed to evade. It is designed to fly its programmed route, maintain its altitude, and collect. Evasion is not in its operational concept. This is a characteristic that makes it easier to intercept, and simultaneously means that the intercept is less operationally urgent than it would be for an evading contact. The drone will be where the geometry says it will be, which makes the engagement timeline predictable and comfortable. The FA-18E lead descended from 22,000 feet to 10,000 feet and closed on the contact from the south, positioning to come alongside the drone from below and behind. The intercept geometry that provides visual identification while minimizing the chance of a collision with a contact whose flight path is predictable, but whose dimensions at range are not yet confirmed visually. At 2:27 p.m., the FA-18E lead made visual contact with the Shahed-191 at approximately 2 nautical miles. He described it on the radio with the economical precision of a naval aviator who has been trained to provide useful information rather than editorial commentary. Contact is a twin-boom delta-wing UAV, gray single-pusher prop, payload bay visible on centerline, antenna array on lower fuselage, no markings visible at this range, speed 138 knots, altitude 8,400 feet. On course, the description was logged, time-stamped, and immediately useful. The antenna array on the lower fuselage was the data link. The data link was transmitting. The SLQ-32 suites on the escorting surface combatants, which had been logging the contact's emissions since it first appeared on the E-2D's picture, were collecting that transmission with the patient thoroughness of systems designed to do exactly this. What the data link was transmitting was imagery. The Shahed-191's camera payload was looking at the Arabian Sea below and ahead, and the imagery it was collecting was being relayed in real time to whatever ground station was receiving it on the other end of the data link. What the imagery showed at this moment was the F/A-18E, the drone's camera, looking forward and slightly down from 8,400 feet, had acquired the Super Hornet that was closing from below and behind. The ground station receiving the feed was watching an F/A-18E Intercept approach in real time. This was not in the mission plan for this drone. The mission plan had been to overfly the carrier strike group at altitude, collect imagery of the Nimitz and her escorts, and relay that imagery back to the ground station. The intercept by the F/A-18E was an unplanned variable. At 2:28 p.m., something operationally interesting happened. The data link changed its transmission frequency, not dramatically, not a full-spectrum hop that would suggest a sophisticated frequency-agile system. A single discrete frequency shift, approximately 4 MHz from the original operating frequency, consistent with either a pre-programmed frequency change at a scheduled waypoint or a ground station command response to the intercept. The SLQ-32 suites noted the frequency shift within 2 seconds of its occurrence. The shift was logged. The new frequency was characterized. The ground station's response time, the interval between the F/A-18E appearing on the drone's camera feed and the frequency change, was logged as 3 minutes and 41 seconds. 3 minutes and 41 seconds between the ground station observing the intercept and issuing a command response. That interval was itself intelligence. It characterized the ground station's decision cycle, the time from observation to action for this specific operational event type. The EA-18G launched from the Nimitz's flight deck at 2:29 p.m. Its mission was not to jam the data link. Jamming would have ended the collection opportunity prematurely. Its mission was to collect. The AN/ALQ-99 system's passive collection capability, operating from the EA-18G's flight altitude, could characterize the data link's new frequency with higher precision than the shipboard SLQ-32 suites, and the directional characterization of the data link's antenna would allow a bearing calculation toward the ground station that was receiving the feed. The bearing calculation, completed at 2:31 p.m., was consistent with a ground station located in Yemen, specifically with a geographic area in Yemen that had appeared in previous collection reporting as a possible EIRGCN affiliated signals facility. The bearing did not confirm the facility. It was consistent with it. Consistent with is the language of intelligence that is building rather than complete, and the building had just received a new course. At 2:33 p.m., the F/A-18E lead completed his visual identification pass and repositioned 800 meters off the Shahed-191's left wing, close enough to maintain visual contact, far enough to be outside the drone's camera coverage arc. The positioning was deliberate. The intercept was being managed as an escort rather than an engagement. The Shahed-191 was not engaged. This requires explanation, because the natural question is, why not? The answer is calibrated and has several components. A reconnaissance drone over international waters at 8,400 feet, not transmitting on a weapons targeting frequency, not maneuvering toward the carrier, not presenting the behavioral profile of a weapons platform. is a different legal and operational category than an attack drone on a weapons approach. The rules of engagement have thresholds. A Shahed-191 on a reconnaissance profile does not, by itself, cross those thresholds. Intercept, escort, and collection are the appropriate responses to a contact that has not crossed the threshold. The second component is the collection value. A Shahed-191 that continues flying continues transmitting. A Shahed-191 that is engaged stops transmitting. The data link characterization, the ground station bearing, the frequency shift response time, the behavioral profile of the drone under intercept conditions. All of this collection requires the drone to keep flying. Ending the drone's flight ends the collection. The tactical action officer had made this assessment at 2:24 p.m. before the FA-18E reached intercept geometry. The commanding officer had confirmed it at 2:26 p.m. The drone would be escorted and collected against. If it crossed a threshold, if it descended into a weapons approach profile, if it activated a targeting seeker, if it maneuvered toward the ship in a way that changed the threat assessment, the engagement option was available in seconds. It was not needed. At 2:19 p.m., when the contact first appeared on the E-2D's picture, the Nimitz's launch cycle had 11 minutes remaining. At 2:30 p.m., the launch cycle completed. The Nimitz turned to her new operating course, away from the drone's approach bearing, and the committed heading window closed. The drone had not penetrated closer than 43 nautical miles to the carrier during the committed heading window. The F/A-18E had been at intercept geometry for 6 of those minutes. The window had closed without consequence. At 2:41 p.m., the Shahed-191 reached its closest point of approach to the Nimitz's position, 39 nautical miles, slightly north of the carrier's beam, and began a gradual left turn that took it onto a northwesterly return course. The turn was consistent with a pre-programmed mission profile, reaching its surveillance waypoint and beginning the return leg. The drone had not overflown the carrier. It had approached to 39 nautical miles, which was outside the strike group's defined inner defensive zone, but inside the E-2D's comfortable tracking range, and turned back. Whether this represented the intended mission profile, approach to a specific waypoint, collect at that range, return, or whether the F/A-18E escort had influenced the drone's ground station to command an early return was not determinable from the available information. The 3-minute 41-second response time suggested the ground station was actively managing the mission rather than running a fully pre-programmed route. Whether the decision to turn at 39 nautical miles rather than continuing to a closer waypoint was reactive to the intercept remained analytically indeterminate. The indeterminate question was logged. The analysts had an interest in whether IOR GCN reconnaissance drone operations modify their profiles in response to intercepts. This engagement provided a data point. The data point was ambiguous. Ambiguous data points are still data points. The F/A-18E lead escorted the Shahed-191 for 11 nautical miles on the return leg, then broke off and returned to the recovery pattern. His fuel state was the determining variable. The intercept had extended his time on station, and the return leg had consumed the last comfortable margin. He logged his fuel state and his breakoff point. The Shahed-191 continued northwest and disappeared from the E-2D's picture at 3:24 p.m. at approximately 190 nautical miles from the Nimitz, consistent with its radar cross-section, dropping below the E-2D's effective detection threshold as the range extended. It had been on the E-2D's picture for 1 hour and 5 minutes. 1 hour and 5 minutes of continuous collection. Now the intelligence product, which was assembled and formatted by 5:30 p.m. and distributed through channels that the after-action report listed, and the public record does not. The data link characterization was the primary product. The SLQ-32 suites had collected across the full engagement window, and the EA-18G's collection had added precision to the characterization during the 15 minutes it had been airborne. The original data link frequency, the shifted frequency at 2:28 p.m., and the specific modulation and waveform characteristics of both were logged. The comparison between the two frequencies provided information about the data link's frequency agility parameters, specifically that it used discrete preset channels rather than continuous frequency hopping, which has implications for both collection and potential future countermeasures. The ground station bearing at 2:31 p.m. was assessed as consistent with a known person of interest location in Yemen. This assessment was filed with the analytical product and flagged for corroboration against additional collection events. Single-bearing lines are useful for correlation, but insufficient for confident attribution. A second event from a different collection geometry would produce a cross-bearing that either confirmed or eliminated the location. The response time interval, 3 minutes and 41 seconds from intercept observation to frequency command, was the collection element that analysts found most useful for future planning. It established a baseline for the ground station's decision cycle under pressure. 3 minutes and 41 seconds is the window available to a system designer who wants to operate within the ground station's response time before a commanded change can be implemented. The window was logged. The visual identification data from the F/A-18E leads pass, twin boom, delta wing, gray, pusher propeller, payload bay, lower fuselage antenna array was compared against the existing Shahed-191 documentation and found consistent with the most recent publicly available configuration. No anomalies noted. The antenna array on the lower fuselage matched the configuration in the threat library. The mission profile data, approach bearing, altitude, speed, closest point of approach, turnback point, return track, was formatted as a behavioral profile for Shahed-191 reconnaissance operations against carrier strike groups. The approach geometry, the standoff distance at which the turn occurred, and the total mission duration contributed to a model of what a Shahed-191 reconnaissance mission against a carrier looks like in practice, rather than in theory. The carrier's commanding officer reviewed the intelligence product summary at 6:15 p.m. He read it with the focused attention of a senior officer whose ship had been the target of a surveillance operation for an hour and 5 minutes, and who wanted to understand precisely what the other side had seen. What the other side had seen, based on the drone's camera geometry and the imagery product that the ground station would have received, was the Arabian Sea, the approach bearing to the carrier strike group's operating area, and, from 39 nautical miles, what would have been, in the drone's camera, a small gray shape on the water surrounded by smaller gray shapes at various distances. At 39 nautical miles and 8,400 feet, the Nimitz's flight deck operations would have been visible as thermal and optical signatures. Individual aircraft would not have been distinguishable. The number and relative positioning of the escort vessels would have been discernible. The other side had seen that the carrier strike group existed and was operating. They had seen its general position. They had seen that an intercept had been launched immediately and effectively. They had seen the data link commanded to change frequency. They had received 1 hour and 5 minutes of maritime surveillance product at standoff range. What they had not seen was anything they did not already know. The carrier strike group's existence and general operating area is not a secret. It is a matter of public record and published scheduling. The escort vessel configuration is publicly known. The intercept response time, the speed with which the F/A-18Es reached intercept geometry, added one data point to their understanding of the carrier's air defense posture. But the F/A-18E's intercept performance is also not a secret at the level of detail visible from a drone at 39 nautical miles. The drone had collected. The collection was real. Its strategic value was limited by the standoff range at which the turn had occurred. The U.S. collection from the same event was detailed, technically specific, and operationally useful in ways that the drone's ground station product was not. The data link parameters, the response time, the ground station bearing, none of these were known before the event. All of them were known after it. Iranian state media reported the drone operation the following morning. The coverage described a successful intelligence mission by Iranian forces that had monitored the movements of the American fleet. The coverage included a graphic showing the Arabian Sea with an approach track marked on it. The coverage did not include the F/A-18E escort or the EA-18G collection package or the ground station bearing that was now in an analyst's active file. The Nimitz completed her operating day on schedule. The flight deck crew finished their work at 8:45 p.m. The CDC watch turned over at midnight. The intelligence product was already distributed. Somewhere between 39 nautical miles and a ground station in Yemen, a data link had transmitted for 1 hour and 5 minutes, and both ends of that transmission had been logged by systems that were built to log exactly that. The drone had come to watch. It had been watched more carefully than it had watched. That is the operational signature of the Nimitz and her strike group in the Arabian Sea. Everything that approaches is seen. Everything that emits is characterized. And everything that returns home thinking it collected intelligence leaves behind more intelligence than it took. Bye for now.